According to the latest figures, the number of children being referred to specialist gaming disorder clinics is growing. But is it really an issue, or is it just an attention-grabbing headline to get us buying papers and clicking articles? Now, I know certainly as the mother of 3 small, vulnerable little brains who like to get sucked into a screen, that these things are very, very real. And my next guest has been looking into this topic of how our collective relationships to an online world is changing. And I'm so thrilled to say the psychotherapist Noel McDermott joins me on the line just now. Noel, this is right up my street, because as you just heard, mother of 3, this is really real, isn't it?
It is, but you've got to put it into context. The headline-grabbing figure was 49 children out of a population of 7 million children, so it's not that huge.
Oh no, I get
Where
that.
It's a problem,
Yes.
Where it's a problem, but for most people it's on a shading of issues. And actually, I think there are probably lots of positives available to parents within that sphere as well as negatives.
Now, for you have been doing this for a while now, and I'm sure you're seeing a big difference in how children over the last even decade are interacting with their childhoods and how they play and all of that. And because that information is new, we're kind of in this no man's land of how it will affect, because they are natives, aren't they, to this? Our smallest children are natives to this.
Yeah, I mean, the way I think about it, without going into too much technical detail, I mean, this is the way the therapeutic community thinks about it. The impact of the online world is going to have a significant impact on the human mind, but in not necessarily negative way. In the same way that universal literacy had a significant impact on human functioning and human culture, we think the online world is going to have a similar significant impact, which will bring positives and negatives. The bottom line is it's not going anywhere, so we have to think about our relationship to it and the relationship that our children have, and understand that relationship much more.
I don't know whether or not you are a fan of this particular small screen, but I remember a couple of years back when Mad Men were in their last season, and Mad Men, I always find that Mad Men paint these kinds of pictures really, really well, the sort of psychological impact that kind of floats around as this sort of fifth character in any room. But the Jones character is talking about her child who's sitting in front of a TV screen, and this is the 60s, and one of the other characters is like, "Oh, is he listening?" And she's like, "No, that screen will take care of him for the next week, basically." And this is something that isn't new, is it? That this is, we have had screens for a very, very long time, but it's about how you parent those things, and the outside world is still there, right? So it's just it's about the realization that it's in your power and control.
Absolutely. And it's also about understanding that just because you're anxiety about something, the projections that you place on that thing doesn't necessarily mean is correct. So you have to manage your anxieties about things. And often I think parents are having to manage that they don't understand something, and they're afraid of something that they don't understand. So the first step really in managing that is to begin to understand it and to get yourself knowledgeable about these things. You know, Plato, the Greek philosopher, very famously once wrote, somebody else wrote it for him, that writing was going to rot your brain. It was going to destroy memory. But look at writing and reading. Life is essential without them, and that's where we are with this stuff. We can't get into alarmist stories about this is going to rot your brain. In fact, the opposite is true. Studies show that gaming, for example, produces white brain matter, which is the opposite of rotting your brain. It's actually enhancing it and helping it grow. Yeah. And it's actually, possibly, we shall look at these things, but it's possible it's one of the ways in which we're going to defeat dementia, because white brain matter deterioration is what dementia is. So we have to be very well informed about this stuff. And picking up on your parenting point, I think this is the point, that parents are missing a trick, I think, if they just get anxious about this. Actually, you can form really strong bonds with your kids if you understand the gaming, and maybe even go and learn how to play yourself, and then show them here's a thought. Show them that you've got a game that you really like and ask them to join in with you in playing it. That way you're going to be enhancing your relationship with your kids, not worrying about it.
Yeah, I am very fortunate. I have went to university with a guy who has gone on to become one of the biggest games journalists in the whole of the UK. And when he was a child, his name is Chris Scullion. And he is now on as like a fourth encyclopedia of Nintendo games. He edited the Nintendo mag for forever in a day before it collapsed. But his parents, and particularly his mother, and we're talking about the 90s, you know, when the explosion of Nintendo and Sega Mega Drives were just feeling like they were omnipresent. And I remember growing up as a kid and my mum kind of being like, oh, maybe we shouldn't be letting her have a Game Boy, and you know, the same things that we're hearing and facing now. And Chris credits his mum with being so forward thinking and understanding that this thing that he was gravitating towards would be good for him, that it ended up shaping who he was as a human being. He knew that he wanted to be articulate in this, and he wanted to write about it, and you know, he went into journalism to do so. But actually he was just one person of many. You've seen so many people that are coders and people that have made incredible games, particularly out of Scotland. You know, we've got Rockstar there, and you know, that's something that has had a giant impact on the UK economy. And so yes, I'm with you on this. I'm completely with you on this, that I think that you can get scaremongered into thinking and dragged into anything being scary if you let it.
I think one of the issues is that there are a small number of young people and adults who have significant gaming disorder problems, and they need specialist treatment. The vast majority of people, what we're talking about is what's the impact on a day-to-day life that the gaming is having on the child, on their relationships, etc. If it's not having a negative impact, if you can't observe lack of sleep, aggressiveness, if you can't observe withdrawal, isolation, if you can't observe using of other substances to maintain gaming, then there easily isn't a significant clinical problem. What you have maybe is an issue about how you're going to relate with your kid to this stuff, and how you're going to form a positive relationship with your child around this stuff, which isn't just simply based on prohibition. And I think what I experience is this, that a lot of kids, when mum and dad come to approach them and they've got the gaming console in the hand, the kids are thinking, they're just going to take this off me, aren't they? Right. And they're going to dig the heels in then. The kids are just dig the heels in and say, right, you can't take, this is mine. Whereas if you were to develop a much more creative response, where actually you might sit down and play the console with your kid, you're likely to get a much more positive response to them when it comes to things like, well, I think you've played too much now, haven't you? Do you need to stop? And it's going to enhance your ability to put in healthy boundaries. Because, of course, children don't necessarily know how to put healthy boundaries in. So there is a parenting role there.
You know, you've just said something that will maybe ring a nerve with so many people up and down the land, because you just said disorders and addictions, and those things are warning signs that are not necessarily what's happening in something that's grabbing your headline. A disorder and an addiction is coming from something that is deeper than that. My sister passed away a few years back from having a heroin overdose. So I really understand addictions and why addictions are triggering and what it is that you're searching for. But it's that connection to another human being. It's that connection that's missing in someone's life to making you feel happy. And I think that you're right, that when we get headlines like this, it can almost diminish what is actually happening underneath the problematic behaviour.
Well, I mean, I think if you think about something like heroin addiction, you know, if anybody takes opiates for a significant period of time, they're going to become dependent on that thing. There's not much you can do about that, except don't use them. That's not the same as gaming at all. It's nowhere near it. Gaming is nowhere near that. It doesn't form physical dependencies in the way alcohol and other substances do. And it really shouldn't be viewed in that light at all. It's not in the same category at all. In fact, there's a lot of evidence that gaming can be incredibly positive. So most people won't know this, for example, but the Veterans Administration in the US are developing games that replace opiates as pain medication. And the great thing about the games is that they have no addictive problems with them, because the opiate medication does. And so if you've got things like the Veterans Administration specifically developing games that are non-addictive and reduce pain, where is this scaremongering coming from? I don't understand it. The positives are really there. That's not to say that there aren't problems associated. Here's the thing about games, which people need to understand. They're highly motivating and fun. And a child likes highly motivating, fun things to do. What's the problem with that? There is no problem unless we don't put effective parental boundaries on it. Because kids will just go and do fun things for the rest of their lives and nothing else. That's normal kid behaviour. And it's understanding that and understanding how we can engage with our children to put effective boundaries on their behaviour. That's the conversation we need to have, not about is this an addiction or not. It's not. It's almost never, and it's not even called that clinically, to be honest.
Noel, you honestly have been such a joy to talk to in this. I want to leave you with this final thing. You're absolutely right. I watch the difference between my 10-year-old and my 4-year-old. My 4-year-old is someone who finds his most joy in gaming and and loves the reward of that. My 10-year-old is a very active, sporty kid, and he would play football for longer than, he would kick a ball into a net for
until
longer than... Yeah, honestly, until he was physically exhausted. But you're right, the way that I tackle, no, honestly, it's bonkers, but the way that I tackle both of them, I would never say to Gabriel, oh, come on, your mental health is going to suffer because I've let you...
Exactly.
So thank you
last
so
week
much
I
for
did
this.
my boy in France, right? And he was there on the Nintendo Switch with his mate. They're online talking to all their other friends. What am I going to do? Take it away so he has no friends and nothing to talk about? No. I engage with him. I asked him to show me the game. We play with it. And then I discuss with him, well, how long have you been playing? How long shall we play? Etc, etc, etc. And his friend was joining in on that conversation. By the end of it, they were all negotiating with me. Is this okay? Can we do this? Can we do that? Because I didn't take a prohibitive approach. I took a parental holding, containing, boundary setting approach. One that respected the relationship that my child has to what is to him a really important social activity. And social is the key thing.
Noel, what an absolute pleasure and privilege to talk to you today, and thank you for opening my mind and my own parenting skills. It's just shifting your perception a tiny little bit can make all the difference at home. And it's those tiny little battles that when you win them, you realise, oh my goodness, it doesn't need to be as hard as this.
Yeah, ignore the dramatic headlines about it is my advice. I think most parents have the skills. There's another journalist I would point people out to as well, who has a really nice, interesting sort of database of information about good games, and it's called Andy Robertson, who writes for The Guardian, BBC and stuff like that. And so check him out along with your mate as well. I think both of them sound like they've got a really good set of resources.
No, it was an absolute pleasure talking to you, and please come back on the show later down the line, will you?
Do.
No, brilliant.
Absolutely, would love to. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thanks so much for talking to us.